Let me tell you an amazing story about a man who was so incredible that people still wonder if he was actually superhuman, and his name was Bruce Lee. Picture this, a small guy who wasn't even that big or tall, but he could do things that seemed impossible, like punching someone so hard with just 1 inch of movement that they'd fly backwards across the room, or doing push-ups using only 1 finger, or catching tiny grains of rice out of the air with chopsticks just for fun. Bruce Lee wasn't born with magical powers like Superman, but by the time he was done training and pushing his body to its limits, he might as well have been a real-life superhero. His story starts when he was just a kid growing up, and honestly, he was kind of a troublemaker who couldn't sit still and kept getting into street fights, so his family decided to put all that crazy energy to good use by signing him up for kung fu lessons when he was 13 years old under a teacher named Master IP Man. Back then, Bruce was just a skinny kid, nothing like the muscle-packed legend he would become. But he had this fire inside him that wouldn't quit. He practiced and practiced, learning all the traditional moves and forms, but something wasn't quite right for him because he felt like the old-school martial arts weren't really preparing him for real fights where anything could happen. The big turning point came in 1964 when Bruce was living in Oakland and teaching kung fu to students, but some traditional Chinese martial arts masters didn't like that he was teaching their secrets to non-Chinese people, so they basically told him he had to either fight their best guy or shut down his school completely. Bruce accepted the challenge and won the fight in just 3 minutes. But even though he won, he wasn't happy with how it went because he realized that sticking to just one style of fighting wasn't enough for real combat situations. That moment changed everything for Bruce because he decided to create his own fighting system called Jeet Kune, which means the way of the intercepting fist. And it was basically about taking the best parts from all different kinds of martial arts and throwing away anything that didn't work. But creating a new fighting style meant Bruce had to completely rebuild himself from the ground up. And that's when he became obsessed with getting stronger, faster, and better in every possible way. He started reading thousands of books about everything from ancient philosophy to modern fitness, collecting over 2,500 books in his personal library, and he would study Western and Eastern thinking, self-help books, bodybuilding magazines, and anything else that might give him an edge. Bruce made friends with weightlifters and bodybuilders who taught him about strength training, and he began experimenting with all kinds of workouts that nobody had really combined before, mixing weight lifting with martial arts practice, running, stretching, and exercises that built up his core muscles. What made Bruce different from other martial artists was that he didn't just focus on one thing. He wanted to be the complete package. So he trained his strength by lifting weights and doing resistance exercises, his speed by practicing light punches and kicks, his endurance by running 2 to 6 miles regularly, and his flexibility by stretching every single day, even doing stretches first thing in the morning before he got out of bed. His training routine was absolutely crazy by anyone's standards because he would do 500 punches every day, sometimes while holding light weights to make it harder. And he invented exercises that most people had never seen before, like the dragon flag, which is where you lie on a bench and hold your entire body straight out using just your shoulder muscles, and it looks like you're floating in the air. Bruce was so serious about strengthening his core that he did AB exercises every single day without fail. Not just because he wanted to look good, but because he believed that all fighting power came from having a rock-solid center. And when you see pictures of him, his stomach muscles looked like they were carved out of stone. He even made his own special equipment for training, like pulley systems that would help him stretch his legs higher for kicks, and he used a punching bag that weighed over 300 pounds instead of the normal 70-pound bags that other people used, because regular bags couldn't handle the power of his strikes without getting destroyed. The stories about Bruce's abilities sound almost made up, but people who knew him swear they're true, like how he was so fast that when they filmed him fighting for movies and TV shows, the cameras couldn't capture his movements properly. So directors had to ask him to slow down just so audiences could see what was happening. There was this famous trick he would do where he'd put a coin in your hand and tell you to close your fist the moment you saw him move. But by the time you closed your hand, he had somehow switched the coin with a different one, and you'd be left wondering if you were losing your mind. During training sessions with his students, Bruce would barely touch someone with what he thought was just a light tap, but the person would end up with a dislocated arm or get knocked backwards, because his idea of light contact was still more powerful than most people's hardest punch. He could do one-arm pull-ups like they were nothing, knock down a 300-pound heavy bag with a single kick, and his most famous move was the 1-inch punch, where he would stand close to someone, pull his fist back just 1 inch, and then hit them with enough force to send them flying across the room, which sounds impossible until you see the actual footage of him doing it. Scientists have tried to figure out how Bruce generated so much power with such little movement, but they still can't fully explain it, which just adds to the mystery of whether he was actually superhuman or just incredibly well-trained. Bruce's philosophy wasn't just about fighting, though. He believed in constantly improving yourself and never staying stuck in old ways of thinking, which is why he said things like "be like water," meaning you should be flexible and adapt to any situation. Instead of being rigid and breaking when things get tough, He spent just as much time training his mind as his body, meditating and visualizing his techniques, studying psychology and philosophy, and always looking for ways to simplify and improve everything he did. Following his motto of hack away at the unessential and keep only what really works, even when doctors told him his martial arts career was over after he hurt his back in 1970. Bruce refused to give up and rehabilitated himself through pure determination, coming back stronger than ever and proving that mental toughness was just as important as physical strength. His movies like Enter the Dragon and Fist of Fury weren't just entertainment. They were his way of sharing his philosophy with the world and breaking down barriers for Asian actors in Hollywood, showing that someone who looked different could be the hero of the story. The coolest part about Bruce Lee is that his influence is still everywhere today. From video game characters like Fei Long in Street Fighter, who is obviously based on him, to movies like Kill Bill where Uma Thurman wears a yellow tracksuit just like Bruce did, to Marvel's Shang-Chi character who was originally created as a tribute to Bruce Lee, and even Pokemon characters that never stop kicking are inspired by his lightning-fast fighting style. Professional fighters, actors, and regular people still study his training methods and philosophy decades after his death, because Bruce proved that with enough dedication, creativity, and willingness to push beyond what everyone thinks is possible, a person can achieve things that seem almost magical. So was Bruce Lee actually superhuman? Well, he couldn't fly or stop bullets, but he did things with his body and mind that most people would consider impossible. And maybe that's what being superhuman really means, not having magical powers, but pushing yourself so far beyond normal human limits that you inspire people for generations to come, showing them that the biggest barriers are usually the ones we put on ourselves, and that with the right attitude and enough hard work, anyone can become their own version of extraordinary.